What the Blue Zones say is what's number one in terms of longevity, health and happiness. It's not kale, it's not yoga, it's not swimming in the sea. It's the tribe. It's the tribe of people you surround yourselves. It's the community that's number one in terms of longevity in the communities that live the longest and kind of most wholesome kind of lives, you know.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, medical doctor, author of the 4-Pillar Plan and television presenter. I believe that all of us have the ability to feel better than we currently do, but getting healthy has become far too complicated. With this podcast, I aim to simplify it. I'm going to be having conversations with some of the most interesting and exciting people both within as well as outside the health space to hopefully inspire you as well as empower you with simple tips that you can put into practice immediately to transform the way that you feel. I believe that when we are healthier, we are happier because when we feel better, we live more. Hello and welcome to episode 38 of my Feel Better, Live More podcast. My name is Rangan Chatterjee and I am your host. Before we get started today, just a quick word to let you know that I am going to be on a mini tour around the UK in January 2019 around the launch of my new book, The Stress Solution. You can see all the live dates on my website at drchatterjee.com/events. Do check it out. I really hope that there is an event near you. If not, do jump onto one of my social media channels and let me know where you would like me to speak. New dates are being added all the time. Today's guests are actually two identical twins from Ireland, Steve and Dave, also known as the Happy Pear. These guys are possibly two of the most positive people I have ever had the pleasure of spending time with. I think their story is one of inspiration from both a health as well as a business perspective. We talk about how sometimes it's important to follow your heart and go with your own self-belief rather than with the crowds. How changing their diets and lifestyle has transformed their lives. And we also cover the power of community in the creation of health. I felt happy and inspired at the end of my conversation with Steve and Dave. I'm sure you will too. Before we get started, I do need to give a quick shout out to our sponsors who are essential in order for me to be able to put out weekly episodes like this one. I'm delighted that Athletic Greens continue to support this podcast. I believe that the right nutrition is an essential ingredient to having a healthy and happy life. And whilst I prefer people to get their nutrition from eating foods, I recognize that sometimes in today's busy, stressful world, this can be a little bit challenging. Athletic Greens is unquestionably one of the most nutrient-dense whole food supplements that I've come across and contains vitamins, minerals, prebiotics, digestive enzymes, and adaptogens. If you want to take a tasty greens powder every morning as an insurance policy to make sure that you are meeting your nutritional needs, I can highly recommend it. For listeners of the podcast, go to athleticgreens.com/live more, where you will be able to access a special offer where you get a free travel pack box containing 20 servings of Athletic Greens, which is worth around £70 with your first order. So do go and check it out at athleticgreens.com/live more. Now, on to today's conversation. So guys, I'm here with Dave and Steve from the Happy Pear. We are actually in my house in Cheshire, near Manchester Airport. You guys have flown in this morning to come and record on my podcast. Guys, thank you so much for coming over.
That's just great fun. Delighted. And it's great to be sitting on the ground recording this podcast. It makes it even more fun and more authentic, more grounded, and feels really just lovely. Feels casual.
Yeah, it's great because normally I'm often recording these podcasts in London, either in a studio or, I'm sort of rushing around and I've got a room booked. But it's super nice that we're here in my house. We've got a candle on. I'm next to my son's drum kit. We're all just chilling out on the floor. It's brilliant.
And it's very quiet. It's very calm. Like it really is. There's a lovely atmosphere here. It's lovely to be in your house. Thank you, Rangan.
Hey, no worries. Well, thanks for coming over, guys. I hope we're not that relaxed where we send people to sleep on this podcast. But there's so much I could talk to you guys about. And I think, for me, the feedback I get from this podcast is a lot of people are using it as a way of inspiring them to change their lives and just make small changes sometimes. Often they just hear something that they think, oh, this is great. I'm going to go and do that. And just as you guys were on your way here in the cab this morning from Manchester Airport, I was thinking about how I might start this. And I was kind of thinking that there's a lot of information out there in the world these days about health, but there's a difference between information and inspiration. And a lot of people know the right things to do, yet for whatever reason, they don't feel motivated to actually make those changes. But I think you guys have got a really inspirational story as to how you changed. And why don't you I guess we could start by you saying, what is the Happy Pear and where did the Happy Pear begin?
Okay, cool. Will I start with a story? Will I tell our little story first, and then we can move along? So we're identical twins, both 38, David and Stephen, and we do.
And who's speaking at the moment?
David's speaking here, and this is Stephen's voice. So I guess we grew up in Greystones in Ireland. It's a small little town, about 20,000 people. And I guess when we went to school, we went to all boys schools. We have 2 other brothers, so there's 4 of us all together. And back when we were 18, we were playing semi-pro rugby. We were doing male modelling. We were very good at golf. We were good achievers. We were overachievers as identical twins. And I remember that we'd gone to an all boys school. So really we just wanted to go to college and university just to meet girls, really, because there'd be more schools at university than an all boys school. And I guess we ended up studying business. And at the time, I remember coming out of university and the both of us had kind of lost faith in the American dream, the kind of money makes you happy, going into university, we were all about, we wanted to be millionaires before we were 30. We wanted to have a fleet of Ferraris by the time we were 40. We were very materialistic focused, and we'd really bought into the whole kind of materialistic thing. And by the time we'd finished university, age 21, we'd kind of thought there must be more to life. So we ended up going off on this journey of self-discovery separately as identical twins. And I remember I went to go be a pro golfer, and I kind of sold my clubs very quickly after that. And anyway, we ended up spending a couple of years exploring life and really exploring our own social conditioning and our boundaries. And we ended up, we left as meat and 2 veg kind of Irish people, boys that drank loads of beer and loved nothing more than chasing girls. And we came back, we ended up spending 2 years traveling, and we ended up changing our diet. We became vegetarian and then vegan, and then got into yoga and meditation. And we tried everything alternative, really. And then one day Stephen called me up and he says, Dave, we were 21 at the time, or 23, I'd say. And this is back in 2001. And Steve calls me and he says, Dave, I've got this idea. Do you want to try and start a health food revolution? And I was in Mexico at the time, and I'd been reading all about Che Guevara, and I thought revolution was going to be like storming the parliament and placards and like rallying people and whatever. And Steve says to me, Dave, do you want to start a vegetable shop? And I thought this was the furthest thing from revolution ever. And he says, no, I've got a dream, Dave. Just trust me in this. So we came back to our own little town in Greystones after a few years traveling. And we'd left, as I'd said there, as kind of, we were overachievers. We were going places. Mom and Dad were very proud of us. The kind of community around us really supported us and thought we were great. And we came back as these 2 long-haired hippies that were wearing trinkets. We were wearing polyester shirts. We didn't use soap because soap was bad, man. And we were into yoga, and we were eating a vegan diet. So we changed fundamentally. And our kind of main focus was on health, happiness, and community. So it was much more about, instead of it being about I, it was more about we. So we started our business and we called it the Happy Pear, but we wanted to use business as a vehicle for social change. And when we first started, I was adamant to start it as a charity because it wasn't about money. And I guess having done degrees and masters in business, it was very much, money, capitalism. It was very much, that was success. And I was very much anti-money. I wanted to, we ended up calling it the Happy Pear, but I was adamant I wanted to call it. You want to? Sorry for interrupting. I was just going to say Stephen wanted to call it a different name, and I remember this is 2004, and I remember we just started our business, and we ended up calling it the Happy Pear because it was 2 of us, and we were selling fruit. But I remember the sign man there. It was November. It was 2004. It was a sunny Friday evening. And I remember we were sitting back in the cars watching the shop front as this sign man was going to Declan, the sign man, was going to put the numbers of our shop across the shop front. And we were so excited. And it was so much, it was great, lovely feeling. And then I remember he came back to us after half an hour and he says, lads, you're going to have to call it something else. Like the name it doesn't look right there. And the name Stephen was adamant in calling it was Flinners Fruit and Veg for Social Change. So that was what we wanted to call the business. But so it'll kind of tell you a reflection of where we were coming from, really. And like a lot of people from the local community. We're from a small town, and we started our business in Greystones, which is a small town that we grew up. So a lot of mum and dad's friends from the golf club or the bridge club or, you know, kind of well-established institutes were like, what happened to the lads? Like, they weren't going places, and here they drive a van and they wear funny clothes and they're vegetarians. There was this kind of idea that they're definitely selling drugs down the back.
Yeah.
Obviously we weren't, but it was, you know, and a lot of our friends, even from the rugby days, you know, we didn't have that shared interest. You know, we still had the friendship and the depth of friendship having grown up, but it was kind of like, geez, what happened to Flinner? You know, this type of idea.
I mean, there's so many things that come to my mind as you guys are telling your story. The first thing is that you guys were 21 when you started, you know, feeling that there was something else out there. That is this the route to happiness? You know, just making a load of money, you know, going out with lots of girls, drinking a load of beer, you know, that sort of thing, which many people do think at 21. I certainly think, if I think back to me at 21, it probably wasn't dissimilar in many ways. But I certainly wasn't, I don't think I was aware enough of myself at the age of 21 to think that there was something else out there. That's for sure. You know, we were just talking, I was a very keen musician, well, still am. And, you know, I still was harboring dreams of actually rock and roll at 21. I wasn't really thinking about changing my diet. I wasn't really thinking on going on this journey to actually find out what more there is to life. So I'm interested as to what was going on at 21 that made two, you know, beer-loving rugby players, you know, go on such an extreme lifestyle change compared to where you were. And the other thing I really want to touch on is, you mentioned, Steve, about we. There was no I for you guys. It was always about we and creating a community. And I wonder, is there something about being an identical twin, do you think, that plays into that? Because a lot of us are quite me-focused in society, particularly these days. And, you know, very few of us are identical twins. So you've obviously grown up and...
We've grown up as a we.
Exactly.
In essence, like in my language, I will regularly use we by accident.
So there's got to be something in that. Or what do you think? Is there something in that you are identical twins that really led you to have community and we right at the top of what you guys were doing?
I don't know. I like to go into the first part of your question there. Like, we were 21. I'd finished a master's in business. You'd done a degree in business and finance. And I remember sitting at home. We explored the idea. We always wanted to work together because we had such fun hanging out. And we figured, you know, we were kind of a bit very we kind of our own ideas about the world, and we wanted to go explore them. So we were naturally gravitating to start being self-employed or running our own business. And I remember we spent the summer exploring the idea of a kind of environmentally friendly property development company. And after a while I was kind of like, not really into this. And I remember sitting at home, mum's kitchen table. It was about November, and I was like, I said to Dave, like, I don't know, I don't feel that happy in myself. Like, I'm going to go away. I'm going to buy a one-way ticket to Canada, and I'm not coming back until I know what I'm into and I'm happy. And a lot of the dissatisfaction, like, we're identical twins, so you spend your life as a we and competing for love and attention. So it was quite a brave step for us as individuals to go off and be, I'm Stephen and I'm exposed. I don't have David here to protect me.
You both went off separately.
Yeah. To try to understand what it's like to be an individual, and two, to kind of explore our own social conditioning. Like, at the time, we obviously didn't know that. I was just going because I wanted to explore the world. And I remember meeting Uncle Porg, and he was like, what are you doing, lads? Are you going, what's your trip for? And we'd take the piss going, I'm in search of truth, man. But the reality was we were in search of our own truth, like trying to explore like our social conditioning and what was beneath the life we were told to live by society, if you will.
And why, you know, in your experience, obviously you've been doing this for 13, 14 years now?
Yeah.
To me, I wish I went on that journey at 21 in many ways. Well, not I wish, you know, I kind of very accepting these days of the way things have played themselves out. Yeah. You know, I presumably wasn't ready to go on that journey at the age of 21. You know, it does seem that was in complete contrast to what a lot of your peers were doing.
Very much so, yeah.
You know, and also the community in which you grew up, that it seems quite alien that what you were doing compared to everything around you. So how was that?
David here. I was thinking what was quite interesting in terms of that was, so we left with our community was rugby players. It was beer drinking. That was our pastimes, and that was what we did. And we came back and we had fundamentally changed, where our views on life had changed quite significantly. And obviously our old friends didn't really accept us because we didn't have the rugby in common. We didn't have the drinking in common. They thought we'd changed so much. So setting up our business was our vehicle to create a community. We wanted to create a community of people around this new lifestyle. So when we started our business right from the start, it was really about inviting people in, creating this community that was more focused about lifestyle, about health, about eating good locally grown organic food, and really trying to celebrate this type of thing. So right from the start, we used to do baking competitions. We used to go speak in local schools. We'd go any opportunity to go kind of evangelize this kind of new lifestyle. That was what we kind of started doing.
Did you find it difficult? Because I'm just thinking about this. A lot of the listeners to this podcast, from the feedback I get, have already made significant lifestyle change or are, on the road to trying to make those changes. But often they come up with an obstacle, which is their existing network, their friends or their family. They like them the way they were before, not when they were really careful over what they ate or, talking about how important it is to think about the wider world and the impacts that all our decisions make on the wider world. And, I wonder if there's anything that you guys can share that you think would be useful for them, because a lot of people find this very, very difficult.
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the keys to any lifestyle change is creating support and community around you, because ultimately we become a product of the 5 people we spend most time with. And if you're spending time with 5 people that don't want you to be healthy, don't want you to be whatever the lifestyle change you're trying to apply. So I think even in our case, and as Dave mentioned there, we came back fundamentally different people, and lots of our old mates didn't want us to be.
How was that when you met your buddies?
It was quite like, what the hell happened to you? They didn't know. We didn't have that.
Did you find that hard though?
Well, it was easy because we're twins, so we didn't need the others. We were very happy in our own little world. It was great. So in essence, when we started our business, we had to find new mates. So we ended up hanging out with there was a lot of kind of transient Spanish people around the town. We became friends with them. We started anyone that was vegetarian or was into health or was into community or was into swimming in the sea and wasn't into kind of going out getting drunk. It was like, oh, maybe will you be my mate? Can we be mates? This type of thing. And quite funnily, the worlds that we live in, the little bubble we live in now, there's more people than not that don't drink, that swim in the sea, that do yoga, that do triathlons, that like eat well, that like have they're into like, it's just a different kind of community than when I read the newspaper or I go travel and I realize, oh my God, people eat, So it's funny how our life, this kind of community of people has kind of fleshed out around our little bubble. It's really amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it really is incredible to have had the foresight to do that. I think the whole piece about community, I think, is huge because, loneliness is something that is endemic in society these days. And when people talk about loneliness, they often imagine elderly people, living by themselves, not seeing any other, friends or family for a long period of time and all that kind of stuff. But I can tell you that as a doctor, as a practicing GP, I'm seeing a lot of young guys, particularly between the age of 30 and 40, who are lonely in the sense that, sure, they've got jobs, they're seeing people, but they're not actually making time to see their friends. They're too busy to actually see their friends. They sort of feel in many ways that I don't really need to see them because I can kind of see on Instagram or Facebook what they're up to. So why do I actually need to see them in real life? And, we're learning more and more that being lonely is as harmful on your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which it's just profound. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing about what you guys are about. It's creating that community. You've done that in the village where you grew up, and I'd love for you to share all that with the listeners. But why do you think community is so important? How do you think we can actually, for people listening to this who don't live in a very tightly knit community like you guys do, is there stuff that they can learn about how they can create communities to help them lead happier and healthier lives?
Brilliant. Love it. I think the first one, I totally validate with everything what you're saying. I know now one of the leading causes of disease nowadays is not cancer, it's not heart disease, it's isolation, loneliness and depression. And that's what it's saying is the root of so many of these diseases, as you're saying. And interesting enough, when we were here, we were on our way over traveling this morning, we were reading stuff about the blue zones. And what the blue zones say is what's number one in terms of longevity, health and happiness. It's not kale, it's not yoga, it's not swimming in the sea. It's the tribe. It's the tribe of people you surround yourselves. It's the community that's number one in terms of longevity in the communities that live the longest and kind of most wholesome kind of lives, you know. So I think community. Stephen's got 2 stories.
Yeah, I think okay, where will I go first? But I can tell, like, ultimately our business was set up to create this community, and 2 things or 3 things anyway come to mind initially. Like, first thing, I think it's saying hello to people and acknowledging them. Like, I remember a friend was telling me, it was Sarah, after we were swimming in the sea, we were back having breakfast in the Happy Pear, and she was telling me about an interesting guy who, you know, lived in just a normal housing estate, and he decided, I wonder what happens if I pull down the wall in my garden and put a swing and a bench in it. And he happened to live on a corner of the road, and he found it was amazing. So strangers would come and sit down at his bench, he'd come out of his house, and suddenly he'd talk to them, and they went from being a stranger to someone he knew, and then from getting to know them more, he was hanging out and they became dear friends. So I think it's, in modern day society, it's just connecting with another human, to be more intimate, to show our vulnerability, and I think that's ultimately it. And I think anyone who's listening to this, it's simply like, I know we're on our way down to London later, and London can feel so lonely because everyone's in such a rush, they're so busy. But it's amazing when we're, I guess, approaching London as a foreigner, in for 2 days, you're really excited, you're chatting away to anyone on the tube, and like initially say you're on the tube and you pull out, you know, a little, maybe it'll be like a tub of berries, and you offer the person next there, like they think it's nearly like poisoned. But slowly, if you offer another person, and 4 people reject, but 1 person said yes, and then you go back to the others and they'll all take one, and then suddenly you're talking, and it's amazing. Just a little thing like that can change your day.
I can imagine you guys doing that, actually, because one thing I think is worth sharing is that I remember when you guys first contacted me on Instagram, it was with a video message, and it's really quite striking, that because there's something quite unique about that. It was really happy, engaging message that really struck out, you know, really connected with me, because it's just more human. It was really human. And I always remember that. And I remember showing it to my wife thinking, God, these guys are great. You know, they're just absolutely, what a lovely, lovely way to get a message. And what you say about the tube as well, because I, like you guys, spend quite a lot of time in London these days, even though I don't live there. And I love going in, but I also love getting out personally. And I'm from the Northwest. I'm from Manchester. That's where I sort of grown up most of my life. And I also often in London, when I first started going, I chat to people on the tube. Hey, how you doing, mate? Are you doing well? And I know people would just often blank me or sort of think it's so. Yeah, because that's how we roll here up north, and that. It's great that you guys persevere with that and make, you know, all it takes is one person to
have great conversations in the tube. Like, I've been surprised at how quickly you can get to something deep and significant. But I know certain things that we've done in our community is when we first started our business, we had the fruit and vegetable shop, and we opened the cafe next door, and the fruit and veg shop, the door.
Can I just give a context? So we kind of told a little bit of a backstory, but today we now employ 130 people, and there's 3 cafes, 2 shops, a farm, and we've products in about 1,000 stores in Ireland, and now over here in the UK in Waitrose. So the business has kind of grown it's turned into a business more than just 2 lads with a little vegetable shop. So just to give a little bit of context. Oh, and we've written a few cookbooks that are bestsellers as well. So
yeah, which is incredible. And you guys, you flew over from Dublin this morning, and you know there's a 2 or 3 Happy Pear bags full of incredible goodies, which I've already started munching on, and they are fantastic. But what's really interesting is that you brought some fresh coffee today. Now, I've actually stopped drinking coffee a couple of months ago for a whole variety of different reasons. And I understand from you guys don't actually drink that much coffee either. But what we did do is that I thought, you know what, you guys have brought your coffee over. We're all here together. We're catching up. We're meeting for the very first time. You know, I brewed some coffee, and we sat around together in company, having a great catch up and a chat.
Oh, totally agree with that. I think it's it. Like when we first started our cafe, I was adamant to Dave, we're not selling coffee. Coffee's bad. It's a drug. People get too much of it. And then Dad said, that's ridiculous. You can't have a cafe and not sell coffee. So for about 7 years, I resentfully made coffee, and we sold coffee. And then a number of years ago, a childhood friend, Paul Grimes, started working with us. And you know, when you meet someone that's so passionate about something, even being around them, you feel like, wow. And he started talking about coffee, how like you can have a Kenyan coffee that tastes of blackcurrant, you can have like a roasted Brazilian that tastes of chocolate and this type of stuff. So I was immediately fascinated. And Paul subsequently came to work with us and we started our own roastery. And as a chef, I'm fascinated with the kind of pursuit of flavor and the controlling of the variables to kind of enhance flavor. And I think with coffee, although many could see it as a drug or a stimulant or possibly extremely negative, but the impact of sitting down together, of kind of knowing where the coffee came from, how it was processed, how it was roasted, sitting together just to appreciate it and pay homage to like the journey that coffee bean is on. It brings you back to the present moment. You feel there's a sense of gratitude or appreciation.
Sorry, Ryan, there was just one part of that story which Stephen forgot to mention was that so we hadn't drank coffee in years, and our childhood friend Paul Grimes started, and unbelievably passionate about coffee. And within 6 months, he had Stephen competing in the Irish Barista Championships Awards, which he didn't win. He should have won. He won like a number of latte art contests, and we'd gone from people that hated coffee to people that were we really appreciated the kind of art and the artisanal craft behind it. So
yeah, and there was a real mindfulness and being in the present moment about what we just did, sitting around the kitchen counter talking over a coffee. And that's in real contrast, isn't it, to what you see in, I don't know if it's the same in your coffee shop or your cafe, and I'd love you to share that in a second. But, as I was just saying, I spend a lot of time in London. You guys spend a lot of time in London. When I'm in London, or even frankly, if I'm here in the northwest of England, it's so common now to be in a coffee shop and everyone's in a rush. Everyone's stressed out. They're waiting in line. They're often just, trying to answer their emails whilst they're in line, so not paying attention. They could have actually bumped into someone, a good work colleague or a good buddy, but they wouldn't even have seen it because they're so preoccupied with their phones. And again, I'm not criticizing. I do this many times.
We all.
So I'm not having to go at people. it's just an observation that they're doing that. But then often they'll also buy their latte or their Americano to go. And it's very much it's a stressy experience, get it out, let me walk, let me rush to work with my coffee in my hand. And I get it. People are busy. They've got things to do. But there's something so nice about actually being in a coffee shop, let's say, and ordering it to stay in.
Taking that 10 minutes to sit down and just savor that coffee and really appreciate where it's from. And I think ultimately we were starting the discussion earlier just about when is enough, because so much of modern day society is all about pushing, about what's next, about striving forward. It's about being productive and progressive and whatever it might be. But I think it was a Bob Marley quote that I saw on Instagram this morning that I was like, oh, that's a nice one. It's only when you step out of the race do you actually win the race. And I think with life, it's only when you take that moment to stop and appreciate how fortunate we are, and how taking that present moment to suddenly just, wow, listen to those birds, they're beautiful, or wow, look at the complexity of this leaf, or this coffee that meant a journey. It took literally every single person on this planet has impacted this coffee being here with me in this present moment. And I think it's only when you can take a moment to sit and reflect upon that, you go, wow. There's a significant,
and I think that's the challenge of society nowadays. Like, there's never been a time where there's more kind of stimulation, more demands on us, more kind of we're busier than we've ever been. But ultimately, this is a challenge which we personally both find, is that it's constantly you have to catch yourself and go, okay, now this is where it's at. This is life. This is everything. It's to breathe, to take it easy. And when we were discussing earlier, when I talked about, it's often you meet people that are terminally ill or who've kind of had a near-death experience or something, where they really appreciate the moment, where they're living life differently. They're not going around on autopilot like I often am, you often are. I'm sure all of us kind of in some form, we go in this robotic, quick, more, where it's only when you can really catch yourself and kind of go, okay, life is now. It's about connection. It's about
like even just like an example came, remember last Thursday, like we swim in the sea at sunrise every day, and we've kind of gotten the habit of it. And
there are some gorgeous photos on the Happy Pear's Instagram, guys. If you don't follow them, I'd encourage you to follow them and have a look at these beautiful photos. It just
and it's amazing.
you.
But sunrise people, you tend to forget that there's this incredible, beautiful thing about nature, and it kind of just came about. Dave was walking, will I go into the full story? Yeah, I go into a little bit. We were quite Luddite. We were quite anti-tech, like running a vegetable shop and being all about creating a happier, healthier world. We thought tech is the antithesis of this. So we were, we didn't have mobile phones, and we were asked to do catering at the Dublin Web Summit, which subsequently has become the Web Summit, which is the biggest tech conference in the world. But it was in Dublin in a place called the Mansion House, and we were making juices and smoothies for all these tech people. So we were making juices for this fella called Jack Dorsey that founded something called Twitter, and some fella called Reed that founded something called Netflix, and some fella called Nikolai who started this thing called Skype. I didn't know what any of these were. Didn't know them from Adam or Eve. I didn't know, had no reference, but the conversations we had were fascinating. And I remember coming out from it going, I must really work out what a Twitter is and what a tweet is and what Skype is and how all these things work. So we got ourselves smartphones and we were working it out. And Dave we have 5 children between us, not together, but Dave was down walking Elsie, his first child, to sleep, as you do at 5 a.m. in the morning. 7 years ago. And the sun rose and Dave took a picture and put it up on social media, and people really connected with it because it was a symbol of hope, new dawn, beauty, nature. It was very simple. There was a purity to it. So we got in the habit of going down to see sunrise because we used to get up at 4:30 to go into the fruit market. So we enjoyed those early hours of the day. And we were down there, and I remember it was a rainy day, and it was September, and it was kind of cold. And I was down taking a picture of the sunrise, and there was a fella there, and he said, "Do you want to get in there, lads? And I'll mind your gear." And it was like, and if anything happens, I'll get in and save you. It was like, I don't really want to do this, but here's a man challenge me. It's like, of course I'll do it. And in I got, and I came out and we got chatting, and he said his name was Neil, and he said, I'll see you here tomorrow at the same time. I was like, okay. So I went down the next day, and then there was Caroline, another friend, Caroline Barrington. She was on the beach and she came and joined us, and we swam together at sunrise, and then we got out, and then afterwards, see you again tomorrow. So we did that for September, and then it was like, I wonder if we're going to keep this going. And then Hugo joined us, and then Fran joined us, and then we'd go on the 1st of October, and we'd end up jokingly going, we've paid our membership for October, we got to keep going. And we've subsequently done it for about 2.5 years, and we
every morning when we're at home, and we'd put things up on social media. And I started using Snapchat about 2 or 3 years ago, and many people see Snapchat as it's something for younger generations, and it's mostly naked pictures, but there's a lot more to it. It's very of the moment, like as in, I'm going to have lunch now, does anyone want to come? And someone actually shows up in the physical form. So you're taking this digital platform and it's actually connecting in the physical realm. So I remember we used to get hundreds of messages from people going, I'd love to come and join you, but they didn't realize sunrise was at 4. You had to get at 4:30 a.m. There was a wind that would have skinned you. The water was 2 degrees and the air temperature was 0. So it was quite a bracing experience, albeit phenomenal and very invigorating. So I remember it was summer, and I remember going, this was a Tuesday morning, I put it up on Snapchat, right, enough of these messages. We're having a public swim rise. Everyone's invited. We're meeting at the Happy Pear at 4:30 a.m. because sunrise was at 4:50. And this was the big hook. There's going to be free porridge, and we're going to bring tea. So I met Dave that Thursday morning at 4 a.m. to prepare the porridge. And I wasn't sure, I thought there might be 5 people. There might be Raj, Mark, maybe a few others, maybe the usual crew. And we couldn't find a small pot, so we ended up cooking a big pot. And we walk out at 4:30 a.m. and there's about 150 people. We walked in the middle of the road, down to the sea, the sun rises. It was a beautiful experience. And subsequently, we've probably had 500, 700 people do it, like big ones. And now
that's for these kind of big public swim rise events, which we've done, really just to celebrate community and the simple act of kind of, the sunrise is such a symbol of hope and dawn and a new beginning, and there's so many people that are part of the community on social media that follow us on Instagram and whatnot, that they kind of go, like it's a great opportunity to come along, meet like-minded people and enjoy in this basic simple thing of swimming at sunrise.
And nowadays, pretty much every day of the week, we'll get people from all over the world come and join us. Like there was a guy from Alaska stopped over for a week. There was a guy from Boston came over.
So it's because it's a thing and people know it's going to be happening, and when you guys are in town, you will be there at the ocean in the morning.
Yeah, down at sunrise. And there's a lot of cross demographics. There could be Linda and Detty. I think Detty just turned 69, Linda's 70. There could be Neil, who's like 45. There's a great cross section of people who come and do it. And like, although you swim in the sea, it's cold, so it brings you back to the present moment. It's quite bracing. You forget what you're stressing about. You come out and then you share tea with people. And you have great chats, great friendship, great joy. That although in winter it might seem like quite a stoic pursuit or kind of crazy activity, on the way down it's raining, it's miserable. You're going, am I crazy? Like, this is ridiculous. And then you come back going, oh my God, that was amazing. Because
do your kids ever come with you?
Yeah. Kids do come with us. But I was going to say 2 things on that is, like, we often call it Dr. C because it's just the best medicine there is of all. Yeah. We'll often go down and you'll kind of say, I don't always like the person getting into the sea, but I love the person coming out, because it's such it brings you back to the present moment like nothing else. And there's lots of medical studies now backing this up, and
cold water swimming,
therapy, and in terms of invigorating your immune system, your whole kind of body and your mental health primarily, really.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of work going on about how it could be a treatment for depression as well, potentially. And it's just incredible. There's so many things to talk about. I guess you have created a community where not only yourselves, but many other people also go into the ocean every morning.
Oh, it's much
in Ireland, even in the winter, which is just incredible in itself. But I'm interested in, on an individual level, what benefits have you felt in your own life from having that sort of morning ritual?
I think it's one of the highlights of our days, honestly. And I can say me personally, like sometimes you'll go, oh, geez, it's so early. I don't feel like it. And it can be challenging. And then you'll walk down to, there might be a couple of people at the shop, and we'll make tea. We usually make a 4-litre flask of tea, and we'll bring some little snacks, because it's as much the community and the chats after are as important as the sea. And we'll walk down and you'll kind of go, geez, are we crazy? And then you'll suddenly turn around the corner to the beach and you'll see the light, you'll see the dawn. You'll suddenly, my spirits will lift. We'll get down to the beach. It's this sense of overcoming this obstacle. We're getting in this cold water together. And you'll meet people on the beach, and in we go.
What do you do when you're not at home? So you travel a lot as part of your business and what you guys are doing. Like, let's say this morning, for example, I'm guessing
got up at 3:30.
You kind of let go of the routine and you enjoy the sense of break from it. Like today, we got up at 4. I was up at 4 a.m., met Dave in the shop, and we went in and didn't even do handstands. I watched Iron Man, a Marvel movie, on my phone, and it was so enjoyable. Just mixing it up, and just like I guess in modern day society, if you're really focused and driven, you're reading productivity books, and you're very focused and self-help books, and you're meditating and you're doing everything. But it was so lovely just to watch, some total fantasy movie, and it was so wonderful.
But saying that, in terms of today, like we're traveling, we're going down to London later today. I'm sure at some stage we'll find somewhere to do handstands or do yoga, because movement, like in our day, in the various form, if we don't get a swim in, we'll certainly do handstands for a bit. We'll probably stretch.
Well, I have just seen you guys do handstands in front of me in my living room. It's incredible. And I hope, because my son's on half term, he's not in at the moment, I really hope that he gets to come and actually watch that, because Daddy, I can't do them. I'd love to be able to do them. So I'm hoping, watching you two do it might inspire him to go, wow, that's a pretty cool thing that someone actually did it in real life in my living room. Do you know what I mean? In terms of making it practical. It wasn't on YouTube, or it was actually, I saw it with my own eyes. Yeah, so that's the brilliant. Selfish part of me. I'd love my son to actually see that. To show him. But can I just ask, a lot of people, including myself, will be listening to that and going, that just sounds idyllic to me. I would love, especially as I'm getting older, I'm realizing more and more that, I'm very proud of what my mum and dad's, how they brought me up. I think they did a fantastic job. They were immigrants here in the UK, trying to literally give me and my brother as the best possible life, like most parents, to be fair. And, I just don't think growing up, I had a lot of exposure to nature with my family. I maybe at school or whatever sports we were doing, sure, but it wasn't a big thing. And I'm realizing more and more, particularly as I get older, that I'm craving, swimming in the ocean. I've rarely done that in my life.
Or a walk in the park.
Yeah, I've taken up running recently, and I don't run on roads. I'll go and run in the local park or in this local forest. I'll go for a run there, and it's a different experience. And I'd love to bring my children up with that real
connection to the natural world.
Connection to the natural world, exactly. When so much of how we live, particularly in urban environments, is disconnected from the natural world, including the food that we eat. So much of the time we're disconnected. But I guess on one level, people might go, "That's fantastic," but I don't live near the ocean. So, is there something about a morning ritual, whether you have access to the ocean or not? I mean, is there something about having a sort of defined morning ritual that sets the right tone for the rest of the day?
Yeah, I think brilliant. It's something that we work really hard with. I think happiness is something that unites us all as humans, and it's something, as a father, it's all I really want for my children. I want them to be happy. Obviously be respectful, not disrespect anyone, but to be happy and fulfilled in their life. And I think one of the cornerstones of happiness is obviously the sleep, and you go through it in your book. Very good, Rongan. But one of them is movement. And I think it's something that we've created, and we've had to work quite hard to create a morning routine and ritual around it, because back many years ago, you get up, you check your emails, you quickly it's very easy to get stuck into work. But it was only a number of years ago, we went over to Cambridge and we sat with a man called Charles Handy. Dave had written a thesis on him. He's written a number of kind of business philosophy books because his father was a vicar. So he's quite philosophical approach on business. And he was 84 and we went to meet him to kind of discuss what is enough. And like we'd opened 3 cafes and we'd borrowed a sum of money and we talked about opening 5-10 more cafes. And we were kind of wondering like, what is enough? What's true success? And it was only through that conversation that I realized true success was being able to get up, go train with Dave, whether it be handstands, yoga, gymnastics, going for a run, whatever it might be, some form of a training for an hour, go for a swim at the sea at sunrise, come back, have brekkie with my kids, take my kids to school, and anything else was a bonus after that. But that start, it felt really grounded. I felt very connected to myself. And I think although it might be perceived that we live in an idealistic environment, and although we do, when we travel to London, there's so many wonderful parks and so many incredible people that social media, albeit gets a bad rap, it has a wonderful ability to connect with people if you reach out. And I think it's a matter of like regularly in the morning when we wake up, say I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I don't want to train, especially now it's October, it's colder, it's darker, it's like, I don't want to train. But if I've agreed to meet Dave and Raj at 5:30, I'll show up.
Community, right?
It's social support and social accountability.
So I think that's a key point there.
And then when you show up and you meet Dave and Raj and you don't feel like training, it's the lads. Like, I got to bring my game. I don't want to look bad in front of the lads. So you end up helping and supporting each other in a nurturing environment to have a laugh and to be better versions of yourself. And then I mightn't feel like meditating, but Raj and Dave do. So it's like, okay, we all meditate. And afterwards, I always feel better. I never go.
And it really... trying to make lifestyle change by yourself can be challenging.
Really difficult, yeah.
It can be incredibly challenging. Yeah. And I remember, we were just having coffee now, just chatting about those BBC One series that I did, Doctor in the House, where I went in to help families with a whole variety of different health issues. And I realized more and more, obviously a very, very luxurious opportunity in many ways to actually be and actually meet the whole family, because often in my surgery, I'm only seeing one person in the family. But any change that I would try and implement with, let's say, the sickest person in that family, I'd always try and encourage everyone to do it together. Because I said, actually, it's going to be very hard for you individually to make lifestyle change. If you're trying to, let's say, reduce your sugar intake, for argument's sake, yet your husband is having 3 Mars bars a day, on the sofa next to you while you're trying to resist, that is destined. Within days, there's going to be a problem with that.
Yeah,
Mars bar warfare.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's something about community. If you're lucky enough to have it, but I guess the wider point there is, social media has come up a bit. It comes up a lot now in the press. It's not all bad. It's not all good. It depends how we use it. And you guys, as you just said, we wouldn't have met each other without social media.
Yeah.
We'll be here doing this.
Before we talk about social media, can I tell one little story, which is related on the community and the health front? It was, so as we said, we started with the idealistic idea of creating a healthier, happier world back in 2004. And we used to do cooking demos upstairs in our restaurant and tried to teach people kind of talk about health. And people would come along and they wouldn't really change. They were kind of little evening episodes. And you'd walk past the chip shop the next day and you'd see people there that were at the course and they'd look guilty when you're walking past. So you'd see you weren't really affecting much change. So we put our heads together. This is back about 2008. I was reading Dean Ornish's book, Dr. Dean Ornish. And he was one of the guys that showed in clinical trials that you could reverse a lot of the indicators for heart disease. So I was reading this and Steve says, why don't we come up with a course that you can measure the improvement in your health? And he had just been talking to someone in Weight Watchers who was measuring their weight. And he said, let's come up with a course to see if we can reverse indicators for heart disease. So I went down to the local doctors and I asked Angela, the nurse, I said, Angela, we need a nurse. We want to do this experiment. Will you help us? And she said, sure. We put up signs around the shop and we said, reverse heart disease. We said, lose weight, skinny, sexy, whatever. And here we were, 2 lads that were running a vegetable shop that were chefs. And
So anyway, people came along. We said it was free, and we had 20 guinea pigs signed up. They came along the first night. Angela had measured everyone's cholesterol, weight, and blood pressure. So we had 3 starting measurements of our study, quote unquote study. They came upstairs to us, and we taught them how to cook. It was a lifestyle course, so we taught them how to cook, porridge for breakfast, chia seed puddings. It was eating fruit salads. It was basic, simple stuff for breakfast. For lunch, it was making vegetable soups and salads. Dinners were pad thais and chilies and dals and curries, and it was all plant based. We put them on a completely whole food plant-based diet for a month. That was it, 4 weeks. And they came once a week to us, and we really supported them with the food because everyone was eating meat and 2 veg, and it was a big shift for a lot of people. And we put on videos of men in white coats and women in white coats that were doctors who were kind of supporting it all. And it came to the last night, I remember, and me and Stephen we were really nervous because we thought if this doesn't work, it's going to go against everything we stand for. We're going to have to, shut up shop and go get a job in a bank or something. We really felt we were putting our livelihood on the line. And thankfully, this is back in 2008, there was a 20% drop in everyone's cholesterol in the course. Everyone's blood pressure regulated. They all lost weight. And it was incredible. And on the back of that, we did the classroom course for the next couple of years, and subsequently it got so much media attention we couldn't do the classroom course anymore that we built an online course, and now we've had more than 15,000 people do it in 52 different countries.
Can people still do that today?
Yeah, it's our online Happy Heart course, which it just gets such good results over 4 weeks that it's this, and it's all about lifestyle. It's about simple. It's everything that you talk about in your book.
Okay, can people access it on your website?
Yeah.
So guys, I will put a link to that on the show notes for this episode, which is going to be at drchatterjee.com/Happy Pear. If you just go to that after the podcast or even now, you'll be able to see everything we're talking about. You can get links straight onto that course if you want to sign up for that.
But one of the bits that makes that course sustainable is community. It's the fact that there's many people doing it together at the same time, and that they support one another and they see each other doing it. And that's ultimately, I think, to bring it back to, if you do want to make any lifestyle change, you need the support of the community around you. Yeah. Like, as I know, when we changed our diet and our lifestyle significantly, and we came back to our hometown, and lots of people were like, what happened to the lads? Like, my God. We had to reach out to kind of other people that I knew that were into health and go, listen, can we meet up and
you create a new community,
and that's what we had to do. And
that's, are you still in touch with your rugby buddies?
Yeah. I'd still see lots of them, and although we don't necessarily have the same, let's say, lifestyles, you've spent 20 years growing up together, so there's great respect and a laugh together. But you don't go to the pub and have pints. Most of them have kids, so now they kind of accept us because it's validated by society that what we're doing is okay. So now it's easier. But at the start, it was certainly a bit,
because you're right. It is becoming a lot more acceptable now. It is, it's incredible for me. Very gratifying as a doctor to see that. Lifestyle is being spoken about a lot more. It's a lot more socially acceptable. It's not necessarily seen as, I think, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was very much, well, you can either enjoy your life or you can be healthy.
Yeah.
And I think there's been a big shift where I think a lot of people are starting to realize, hey, you can have both. And I think I'm super enjoying my life, and I love, paying attention to my lifestyle. It all feeds each other for me, and I guess it's the same for you guys.
And I think quite interesting on that topic. There's, like health, people get caught up with the idea that it's a one track. It's a certain, like, you do yoga, you eat kind of lots of fruit and veg, you meditate, you go to bed early, and that's health. But we all know people that are 90, 95 years old that have drank whiskey, they ate an awful diet, they smoked 50 cigarettes a day, but they laughed so much. They surrounded themselves with people that really lifted them up. They had a really close-knit community of people. So I think health it's not necessarily these kind of topics which we're talking about. There's so many factors to it, and food is just one aspect to it, kind of meditation, mindfulness, community. There's so many factors that make us really ultimately a happy, healthy human.
You're right. And I think, one thing I'm trying to do with this podcast is take health outside the health sphere. So what I mean by that is, I think for far too long we've got our lives, and on the side, we've got our health. We sort of need to eat a bit better, need to kind of pay attention to that.
Eat that salad.
Because it's such a pain, but I've kind of got to do it. I'm getting a bit older now, all that kind of stuff. And I actually believe that health is relevant to each and every single one of us, because the better you feel in yourself, the more you get out of life. And, different things will make different people feel good. But I genuinely, my belief is, and I see it day in, day out with my patients, is that once you can inspire them with a nugget of information that really connects with them so they want to start making change, it's very much like a domino effect, and it's never just one thing. That's why I remember when we were talking before about this 4-pillar approach that I talk about. And the reason I talk about it is because I kind of feel that, health is a different thing to everyone. It's not the same to everyone. And some people, like you guys started on food, and that was your journey. But now you're talking about food still, but you're talking a lot about community and happiness. Yeah. Whereas I've got to be honest, I've had patients who didn't want to start with food. They wanted, for them, getting more physically active first was the trigger. That was the first domino for them that led them to sleeping better, which then they thought, hey, I wonder what happens if I change my diet. So we've everyone goes there on
many gateways to access the I guess feeling a better version of yourself or feeling more connected. I think one thing that you said about nature, to try to be more connected with our natural environment, one of the things that I definitely get out of spending more time in nature is I'm reminded that we live in this very, I guess, modern society, or many of us do, where it's very humans are the dominant species, and we forget we're mammals and we're part of, we're at the mercy, I guess, of the planet and our environment in which we live in. It's only when you spend time with nature do we remember our own insignificance and that we're part of this greater system. And I think it's when we remember our own insignificance, we remember our own mortality, and we remember, wow, we're part of a greater system and we must play our part. This, at least that's what it reminds me. And I think it's very beneficial for us all to do that.
And I was just going to say, just to bring this back to relevance, is that as mammals, and back to your 4-pillar plan, I think movement is such a fundamental thing to one's happiness, and something which we use as a basic measurement. I remember I was sitting having breakfast with Mom probably about 6 months ago. I was up in her house, and she got this, our mother's 67, and she got this Fitbit. And I was like, oh, that's just for people of your age, Mom. That's not for me. I'm a fit ambassador for health. And I'm sitting there, and she said, I'm asking her how many steps she got, and she said, oh, I got 23,000 steps yesterday. Oh, my average is about 20,000. And I had no reference to that. I thought, oh, that's just for you, Mom. Good on you. And she says to me, I think your phone actually counts the steps for you. And she was looking around on my phone. She said, oh, look, there's this health app. So I pressed the health app, and she's going back through my steps and says, oh, geez, Dave, you only got 7,000 there yesterday, 8,000. And I realized, oh my God,
your mother's getting more activity
smashing
than you.
me out of it. So something which we do is, and this is like, we live busy, active. We're like ambassadors for health, and 10,000 steps I think is such a basic thing that everyone can measure. Whether you've got a sitting job, whether you've got a moving job, it's a basic measurement that I think as mammals, what they're saying now, which you'll totally validate, is that sitting is the new smoking. Like sitting is the thing that's causing as much dis-ease and disharmony in our bodies. And I think what they're saying now, it's not exercising half an hour a day or an hour a day vigorously. It's consistently moving throughout the day. When they look at these blue zone areas where people do live these vast, long lives that are wholesome and fulfilled, these people live lives of inconvenience where they move consistently.
And that's the key.
Yes.
That's the key.
Cycling throughout the day, like moving in and out. They're consistently active. They grow their own vegetables. They live a life of inconvenience. And I think we've got to proactively do this in society now.
And that's, you're right. I mean, that in a nub is why we're struggling so much, because life is convenient now.
Oh yeah, you get up, you turn on the heat, and you turn on the cooker, you cook your parts.
We've strived for that as humans. We've always looked for what's the easy. How can we make that easier?
To be as energy efficient as possible.
Yeah, and that's why we. One of the reasons we've evolved so well, and that's why we're here today. But in some ways, that sort of in the current environment, that's actually potentially proving problematic, because as I've said before in the podcast, even gathering food now, our phones are here. We could literally go on an online shopping app, and within hours,
the food's delivered.
We could just still be sitting here and food will come here. And we've never, ever been able to acquire food as humans with that ease.
Yeah.
And so it's that whole inconvenience
with that
piece.
Disconnection, as in who grew our food, how was it grown, how was it cooked, how was it served, and often then we'll eat it looking at our phones. Yeah. So it's, again, I think the more we can appreciate the connection to our food or to more of life, the more we're going to feel whole and more connected, without going too ephemeral and philosophical.
And we don't mean to come across preachy in any sense. Everything we're saying here, we're doing our best to live a life like that.
We're saying it as much to ourselves as
absolutely, But there was a podcast I listened to very recently by Zach Bush. I think you said you listened to it too. And he was asked a very good question at the end. He was said, what would you do if you were Surgeon General doctor, the Surgeon General of America. And he said the one thing which I would do, he referenced Israel. He said Israel have an amazing army because everyone has to spend an obligatory 1 year after school in the army. And he said if I was put on Surgeon General, I would make everyone to spend 1 year working on an organic farm, because therefore they would appreciate where food came from. They'd appreciate a connection with the land, with nature. And I think from the back of that, it would catalyze so much positive change within our societies. Yeah. And I thought that was just, wow,
Yeah, it is. It's incredible. You're right. And I think that's the missing piece when we talk about what a healthy diet is. It's like we're still talking about the components, and often we're talking about fat v carbs, which again, I'm not a huge fan of that debate.
Yeah.
I've really evolved my thinking within that field, and I sort of think that we're being quite reductionist. It's like, where is that food coming from? What's the bigger picture? But I think one thing is worth mentioning, because you guys, I think, are all the cookbooks completely vegan?
It's our first one. When we first started our business, we never labeled it as vegetarian or even vegan. It was for healthy food. Because we're from a small town of, I think at the time there was about 10,000 people in the village. And if you opened a vegan restaurant, good luck. Like back 14 years ago. So we labeled it as just a healthy food place, and people would come in and they'd order, it'd be chickpea curry, but they'd see chicken curry, and you wouldn't tell them. So you give them their chickpea curry, or what they thought was chicken curry, and they'd eat it and they go, that was lovely. And then they come in again, you'd see them next week and they're getting a shepherdless pie. They thought it was shepherd's pie. And it was only after about a month they might come up to you and go, geez, I never even realised it was vegetarian.
Yeah.
And then a few months later you catch them doing yoga. So it's amazing how food can be just an entry point. And I think it's labels like that can be quite binary and separate people. But ultimately and what I was just going to say, just to answer the question, is our first 2 cookbooks were vegetarian rather than vegan. And it's only our recent cookbook, which came out in June, is fully vegan. It's 100% vegan recipes. And our message is not to make anyone vegetarian or vegan. It's not to isolate. It's really to include. And ultimately, all the leading research says the more whole foods you can eat, the better. It's not about vegetarian. It's not about vegan. It's really about having a body that's healthy and functions well.
I've got to say, Dave, one of the things that has really resonated with me about your approach, and what I've heard you guys speak before, is that it's not preachy, and it's not, excluding people who eat meat, for example. That's certainly always the impression I've got, because, yes, you are both vegan, but this is not a vegan podcast. This is not a paleo podcast. This is not an anything podcast, in the sense that it's not about labels. It's about
being open-minded.
It's about being open-minded, and you guys have found that for you that is working incredibly well. But I'm assuming that you've got friends who eat meat.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what your family do, for example, but I just find it. I think there's a lot of people think these days you've got to, once you're in a certain club and you've marked out your territory, that's it, and you can only hang out with other people who are that way inclined. Yeah. And do you know what I mean? And but I've never got that impression of you guys that it's like that.
No, I think ultimately we're all going to die. And as much as me even saying that can come across pessimistic or nihilistic, ultimately I think once we accept our own mortality, we're going to live a more fulfilled life. But irrespective of what our dietary choices, we're going to die. And even if you're vegetarian or vegan, you're not going to get into the VIP section of heaven or whatever it is you believe. So I think it's about doing our best and accepting our own limitations and enjoying it. Because there's no point you sitting there eating a bowl of kale going, I hate kale. Eat the burger and enjoy it. That way?
That's a really good point, actually.
And I think it's not about exclusive. Like, food can often be it can be almost like religion, where people can get very up on their high horses and this is the right way to eat. And it's like, food is just one part. Like, it really is. And I can say this from the point of view of having really explored it and gone into raw vegan and got into fasting and cleansing and living behind a waterfall in a cave with a whole lot of yogis in Costa Rica, and really getting into really exploring, seeing if you could eat yourself to enlightenment, which I realized you couldn't, and getting very
not yet anyway,
getting very kind of too, as you use the word, too kind of microscopic on things, and realizing that food is just one part of, and it's only one small little part of being a happy human. Like, there's so many factors to it.
Yeah, there really are. And
in saying that, I think eating, like, as a society, we need to eat more fruit and veg. Like, we say this from the point of view of people that have eaten a whole food vegan diet for 17 years. And really, I think it's about eating more fruit and veg. And that's the name of the game, and whole foods.
Yeah, and it's
starting where you're at.
And starting where you're at. You're absolutely right. I mean, I think I've always thought about this, and as a doctor, I've got to be inclusive. Any patient that walks through my door, whatever their ethical choice, whatever their own preference, I feel a huge responsibility that my job is to help them within that framework. Wherever they're at, I've got to meet them there. And so I can't really, as a doctor, I don't feel I can be part of a religious dietary tribe. I kind of feel I've got to cover all bases because actually I'm a doctor to help whatever patient walks through my door. I want to be able to help them. If they have a strong attachment to eating meat and fish, let's say, then I want to be able to help them around that. If someone comes in and they want to be vegan and they've got, and I do have some patients, and I have often with some of them felt that actually I kind of feel that maybe some animal protein may help you for a couple of months or a couple of years to really, let's say with an iron level or a low B12 level. And then again, this is not the podcast to go into the debate on supplementation and all that kind of stuff. But I've realized I've got to meet people where they're at. And that's why, one of the recommendations I made in my first book was to eat 5 different vegetables a day of different colors if you can.
Brilliant.
Why? Because I think as a society, as you guys have said, most of us are not eating enough plant foods.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
That applies. And I know there's a lot of people who follow paleo who listen to this podcast, a lot of people who follow what would be called a low carb diet who listen to this podcast. And guys, I'm really, really keen to emphasize this. That I'm going to be getting a whole variety of people on this podcast. I'm going to get people from the vegan community, the paleo community, the low carb community. Why? Because I want a whole selection of different voices to help give information, give perspective, and ultimately you guys have to choose
what resonates with you. But I've got to say that in nearly 18 years now, I think, of seeing patients, I've got to say most of my patients, I don't think eat enough vegetables. Yeah.
So I think, can I say one thing? Sorry for good. I'll go.
We've currently got Dave and Steve fighting over the mic. There's only one mic that they're sharing, just in case you guys can't.
It's better that we share a mic, otherwise we'll talk over each other. But I think, 8 out of 10 Irish people and UK people do not eat enough fibre. And I think fibre is a vital macronutrient that people don't discuss enough. And I think fibre, as you know, like even in Ireland, like say we were trying to launch a healthy eating program in schools, and I went down to my daughter's school. This is May's school, and I was sitting down with the principal, who was Sister Kathleen, and she'd been principal there for, it could have been 40 years, an amazing kind of stalwart. And we were discussing the program, and I was saying fibre, and as soon as I said fibre, she lit up, and I was like, wow, I've never seen a nun get really turned on by fibre. And she said, it's amazing. Over my 40 years here, it's only in the last 5 years, every single week, there's about 3 children go home sick due to constipation. And she said, this was never a problem. But she said, it's only in recent years, as diet has changed massively, that people aren't getting enough fibre, that constipation has become an issue. So I think most of us need to eat more fibre. And fibre, 3 vital functions, just to reduce it. Weight loss. People don't realize that fibre is connected with weight loss because you'll feel more full and generally on lower calories. Second one, obviously digestion. And third one is immune system. It's a prebiotic. So I think we all need to eat more fibre. And even...
Where do you get fibre?
Fibre you get in fruit, veg, beans, legumes and whole grains. So it's in plant food. But even recent research from the University of Oxford, it was earlier this year, trying to find out what was the most important factor you could do to reduce your environmental impact. And that wasn't, electric cars. It wasn't not flying. It wasn't solar panels. It was to trying to eat a vegan diet. And by that, it's not to be exclusively a vegan, but if all of us can just try to eat more whole foods, we're going to feel better. And also the environment with which we depend on is going to feel better too.
Yeah, and that I don't know if you've seen much on the Hadza tribe in Tanzania. They're a modern hunter-gatherer tribe. Still, they're living in a way they're still living a lifestyle that's relatively untouched by modernity and how we're all living these days. In terms of their medication, how they live, they're hunter-gatherers. And what's incredible is that they've been studied a lot in terms of they have very low rates of disease. They're very physically active. And they have about 100 to 150 grams of fiber every single day. Right. So they're hunting. Yes, they're hunting animals and eating it, but they're eating a ton.
So to put that in context, the average
food.
British person gets about 15 grams of fibre a day.
Yeah, and the guidelines say we should be aiming for 30 grams, but these guys are eating 100 to 150 grams. And one of the...
they must be eating planks of wood.
Well, they're having lots of berries, and they're having lots of tubers, lots of plants.
Whole grains, legumes.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're having whole grains, but they're having lots. The point is that they're getting their fiber in by what they have access to in their environment. Now I'm not hunting and, going around Waitrose. I'm not really sort of hunting for my food. I'm sort of going to the aisles that I like and getting my foods. But one of the big things about fiber is, as you said, it's a prebiotic, which means it is the primary fuel source for all these gut microbes inside us. And it's the gut microbes eat that fiber, and the byproducts of that has incredible benefits for our overall well-being and our immune system health. So I think, whatever anyone listening says, whatever your preference is on diets and wherever you are currently, most of us can benefit from increasing fiber. I'm just going to say one thing there, guys, and that's just many people also have irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, and for some people, some of these fiber sources don't suit them that well when their gut is already compromised, and that's we can't really go into that today, but a lot of people with IBS will say, but when I have this stuff, I get more bloating, and that's a slightly separate issue, which my take on that is that we have to fix the underlying cause of the IBS. At that moment, your gut may be compromised, where some of these fiber sources may not agree with you so well. But
it's almost like, just to give an example of that, it's like if I break my arm and my arm is in a cast, and for 6 weeks I can't really use my arm, the muscle atrophies. And it's a bit like if we've grown up eating a Western diet, our stomach,
quite low in fiber.
That's quite naturally low in fiber. Our digestive system isn't used to a lot of fiber. So if you kind of shift to starting eating a diet that's very high in fiber, it's a bit like your arm after it's been in a cast and you take it out. It's lost muscle. It's weak. It needs rebuilding. So for someone that wants to eat more fruit and veg, you might have to do it slowly. Start eating, and as you were saying, people with IBS in particular. But can I say two more things on that?
You can.
I was hanging out with a friend, Dr. Alan Desmond, and he's a gastroenterologist there last week, and he was saying that 55% of calories in the UK and Ireland are coming from hyper processed foods. So that's ultra refined food. So I think as nations, the British, Ireland and the UK, to eat more fruit and veg is so fundamental. It really is. He also gave me the statistic. He said 1 in 17 men nowadays in the UK are going to get bowel cancer, and he said it was 1 in 25 women in the UK. Like that, those are the statistics nowadays. So I think fiber is imperative. As you said, this tribe that eat 150 grams, to even get 30 grams is a huge start, and ideally you'd even get it up to more,
Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, look, I'm so enjoying our chat. I think if you include our coffee conversation, which you didn't record, we've probably been talking about it for about 3 hours now, and there's plenty more we could do. But just to sort of try and bring this, wrap it up and bring it to a close in some way. Your final book, your most recent, not your final book, your most recent book, I'm sure there will be more coming at some point, is called Recipes for Happiness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is a brilliant name. And, happiness, I think happiness is something that has been spoken about a lot in the media these days. Everyone's sort of searching for happiness. And I guess my goal with this podcast is to really inspire people and help empower them so that they go away each week feeling that they are the architect of their own health. They're in control of what happens to them. So I wonder if you guys could finish off with some tips for happiness. Now, I normally ask for 4 tips, but Brilliant. It doesn't have to be 4. It can be less. And you guys don't have to
5.
You can go for 5. You don't need to fight over them. You can both share it with whoever wants to say it. But just some tips which hopefully can inspire people as they finish off this podcast and to go and make some change.
Okay, to make this as practical as we could, here are our 5 tips for health and happiness. Number 1, eat more fruit and veg. We just went through it. Most people don't get enough fiber, and it's not an all or nothing type thing. It's really fruits, veg, beans, legumes, whole grain, nuts and seeds. We've got 400 recipes on YouTube. They're simple, they're easy, they're 5-minute dinners. Some of them, we have a chickpea curry recipe that has more than 1 million views. It takes 5 minutes to make. It's really high in fiber. So it's making simple changes. It's not jumping into all or nothing.
Yeah, and it's starting where you're at. So if you eat meat 14 times a week, maybe try doing it 13. Just baby steps. So that's point 1, try to eat more fruit and veg. Point number 2, we're mammals. We need to move. If we don't move, we don't feel happy. Our primary fuel source, most people, when they hit that 3 o'clock slump, what do we turn to? We turn to coffee, we turn to sugar, we turn to alcohol. Some of us turn to cocaine, some sort of a stimulant.
Yeah.
So I think our primary fuel source isn't food, it's actually oxygen. Then it's water, and only then is it food. So I think if you are looking to get more energy, it's a question we're regularly asked, what food should I eat more for more energy? And we say, exercise. So try to move, and a simple metric is to get 10,000 steps a day. Your smartphone will measure it. And if you have an office job that's kind of by nature quite sedentary, drink lots of water. It means you got to get up and go to the toilet. So it means you're moving and you're rehydrated.
I love
so
it. I put that in my book as well, actually. It's the same thing. So drink more water, you'll get it when you have to pee more. I agree.
Point number 3, we talked about it quite a bit, is community. Ultimately, we all want to feel connected. We want to feel part of something. We want to feel a sense of belonging. And social media, as we were about to talk about, it gets such a bad rap of being isolating and whatever, but it can be such a positive tool to connect people. Like, we wouldn't have met you today if we didn't connect via social media. So I think whatever means it is to make you feel, to connect with other humans, and you might have to proactively cultivate it.
It's about finding your tribe. So every single person listening to this podcast and every single person on this planet is unique, weird, idiosyncratic, special, whatever way we brand it. But it's to find your tribe, to find people that share your values or that are passionate about the things that you are. And the internet, as we mentioned, can get many bad press, but it also can make you find niche. You can find someone that's into tiddlywinks, any weird, obscure thing. Find people that are like you, connect with them. You'll feel more together, connected, united, and you'll feel happier. So I think community.
I think that's one of the best things you can do for your immune system and your mental health as well, community. Point number 4, what's one of your 4 pillars, is sleep. And as kind of men that grew up in very alpha environments with 4 boys, all boys schools, dad was our role model. Like, sleep was for weak. Whoa, sleep was, that was the kind of hardwiring we grew up. It was like the less sleep, the better. And it's only been the last few years since we've had young kids that we've really read into, we've prioritized it, and we've learned so much about it.
And 2 simple factors, or I guess points that I can say about sleep that really resonated with me was, 1, men who get 6 hours sleep or less over a prolonged period will have the testosterone level of 10 years their senior.
Yeah.
And testosterone as a man, vitally important for, 1, being a man, and 2, for muscle production. So if you do want to feel more masculine, sleep is really important. The second one, Dave's peppering to get the mic. The second factor in terms of sleep is anyone who gets 6 hours sleep or less typically will consume 200 or 300 calories more. And of those calories, typically they're the wrong ones. So if you've had a bad night's sleep, you come into work is supplying you with brekkie. There's a great spread there. There's like fruit salad, there's chia seed puddings, there's all this healthy stuff. And then there's the other table full of croissants and pan au chocolates. And if you're sleep deprived, what are you going to pick?
Yeah.
Of course you're going to pick the pan au chocolat as anything to help support you. So I think sleep will help you stay in shape if that's what you're looking to do more.
We could talk lots about this because we're really passionate about sleep, but just really practical things which you go into in your book is, number 1, your room should be dark. Number 2, your lighting, try to cut down on lighting, reduce screen time before bed, and routine. As a parent, with my 8-year-old, my 5-year-old, we start at 6:30, we have a bath, I talk quieter, we read a book, we close the blinds, we really try to slow them down. But as adults, we lie in bed at 11 p.m, we're watching Game of Thrones, we're watching Jon Snow with his sword cutting some lad's head off, and then we turn the light out and we say, night, night, love, and we expect just to unwind just like that. So I think, as you say, a bedtime routine is so fundamentally important, and that might start at, and really what's core about it is to try to go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time, no matter what day it is, or no matter what you do. And if you go to bed late and you've been out partying, maybe have a nap in the afternoon or something as simple as that.
Last and final point number 5. I think health, as we covered earlier, isn't kale, isn't yoga. It's a factor of many things, and ultimately we're all going to die. So do more things that bring you back to the present moment, make you feel happy, and ultimately, I think most important thing, as cheesy and as totally stereotypical as this must say, I think ultimately the most important thing about it is love. So and that starts with yourself. If your cup isn't full, you can't fill anyone else's. So start to do anything that cultivates that sense of self-love and brings you back to the present. As cheesy and as obviously an Instagram quote that might feel, but there's a huge wisdom and simplicity in it.
There really is, guys. I mean, you're 2 of the most inspiring people I've come across, and the energy, the happiness that's there, it's just fantastic. And I really think that the listeners of this podcast are going to get a lot out of our conversation. I certainly hope so. We could have spoken about so many more things. I really wanted to go into this whole thing about what is enough.
That's a great
topic. Definitely. That's something that we're so interested in.
We'll come back to that, definitely. In fact, we're trying to see if we can figure out a live event together in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
So
January.
In January, maybe if we can.
Your book is out, which I'm excited to see. Stress.
Yeah, well, if we can make that happen, maybe we can talk about that.
Yes, we can.
Because I think that's really important, because I think everyone is always seeking the next new thing, or they're seeing someone else on social media, so they want to chase that. So I think we'll park that. I'll come back to that.
Can I say one final thing just before?
Of course you can.
I was just going to say that now we're over in the UK, we've got 6 products available in Waitrose. So if anyone wants to try our food that's high in fibre, we have 2 pestos, we have 2 hummuses, and we have 2 dinners, which are quick, easy and simple. And they're all in Waitrose across the UK if anyone wants to try them.
That's incredible, guys. From starting a vegetable shop to now having all your products available, all over Ireland. Certainly now in the UK, you've got them here in Waitrose. That's absolutely fantastic. I've not tried those yet. I've tried what you've got on your goodie bags here, which is incredible. So I'll feed back in terms of how they sell, but I'm sure they will be incredible. For people who aren't familiar with you guys and what you do, obviously you've got a YouTube channel which is just got so many subscribers and so much content there, but can you tell people where they can connect with you guys and follow you?
We're mad into social media, so whatever platform you use, we're most likely on it. The Happy Pear, and we tend to be prolific. If you're looking for kind of inspirational recipes, quick and simple, YouTube, Instagram, we do daily stories, we post about positivity and lifestyle and trying to make people's life.
And if anyone wants to come join us for a swim, meet us down at the Cove, sunrise, any day of the week.
Just DM us on Instagram just to let us know you're coming.
Oh, well, guys, I think that's a great note to finish it on. Thank you for, giving up your time today, flying out here to see me in my neck of the woods, and enjoy your time in London.
Thank you, Rangan. What an honour. It's been great. Really, really wonderful. And if you don't know, Rangan's 6'6", and he's a big hunk of a man. I didn't know that. When you see Rangan on social media or book, you just see this doctor and that, but he's a hunk of a man, and he's a wonderful musician.
That concludes today's episode of the Feel Better, Live More podcast. I hope you feel as uplifted and energized as I did when I finished chatting to Steve and Dave. Do let us know on social media what you thought of today's episodes, and if you have any further questions for either myself or the Happy Pear. Since we recorded this podcast, we have actually managed to sort out a live date together, which will be in Dublin in January 2019. All of my live dates for the new year can be seen on my website at drchatterjee.com/events. If you enjoy my weekly podcasts, one of the best ways to support me is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you listen to podcasts on. The reviews help to raise visibility of the podcast, which in turn helps me to attract better and better guests. You can also support the podcast by taking a screenshot right now and sharing it with your friends on social media. Please do remember to tag me and the Happy Pear. And don't forget to check out the show notes page for today's episode, which is drchatterjee.com/Happy Pear, which contains links to everything that we talked about today, as well as links to buy the Happy Pear's books. As mentioned in today's episode, stress is often a key driver behind why we make the lifestyle choices that we do. I see in my practice every single day the impact that stress is having on our health, and that was the main reason why I wrote my next book on this subject. The Stress Solution is full of simple and accessible tools to help you live a happier and calmer life, and it's available to order now in paperback or in an audiobook, which I will be narrating. I know that we're picking up new listeners to the podcast every week. For those people who are joining me for the first time, my first book, The 4-Pillar Plan, is all about helping people to make simple and accessible lifestyle changes. It has literally inspired thousands of people to make lifestyle change that many had previously thought unachievable. If you don't have a copy yet, please do consider picking one up. For those of you listening in the US and Canada, it has been released over there with a different title, How to Make Disease Disappear. That's it for today. I hope you have a fabulous week. Make sure that you have pressed subscribe, and I'll be back next week with my latest conversation. Remember, you are the architects of your own health. Making lifestyle change is always worth it, because when you feel better, you live more. I'll see you next time.